It is time for another edition of Bands That Changed My Life. And today we're going to talk about New Jersey mathcore group, the number 12 Looks Like You. Now, by the time I found these guys, I had already been primed by the likes of Between the Buried and Me and the Dillinger Escape Plan, but I was sent down a serious rabbit hole by a college dorm mate that I spent a lot of time in the cafeteria with. Kind of a goofy, weird guy, sort of typical to what I think of the mathcore scene, actually. And he recommended me groups like Horse the Band, I Rustled a Bear Once, and of course the number 12 Looks Like You. And so at that point, I kind of just hopped onto YouTube and went to see what I could find. And I vividly remember finding the video for Grandfather and pressing play. Once again, just another moment of, I have never heard anything quite like this before. I was particularly struck by the dual vocals that were happening, and especially just the overall inflection that they were using. Much more of a kind of high-pitched screamo kind of register, a lot more dissonant, and I wasn't even sure if I liked it at first, but I played that video probably like 5 times in a row, so clearly it had its hooks in me. And then, of course, I was also struck by the absolute chaos of the drums and the guitars. These guys are just absolute riff machines and are just unmatched with playing with technical, jazzy time signatures. So being quite impressed, I ended up picking up Mongrel and then later backtracked to Nuclear, Sad Nuclear, of course. But I was particularly fond of Mongrel and just so many great moments on that album. You've got the amazing opener of Imagination Express. You've got Jay walking backwards. And then, of course, the classic break on The Weekly Wars, which is something I am happy to say I got to participate in screaming along to during a live performance. But as much as I enjoyed all that, what really changed my world with these guys was the release of Worse Than Alone in 2009. I was transitioning from undergrad to grad school, a long-time relationship was just ending, I was moving to a different area of Chicago, and so I was in this just big transition period of my life and a lot of changes, and this album just spoke to me. In addition to just being a really incredible album, it just seemed like right place, right time. So I picked it up on release day, and I remember listening to it on the Blue Line bus heading back to my apartment, and I just could not have anticipated the crater-inducing impact of Glory Kingdom. And again, this is already a band that struck me as being very different from a lot of the other stuff I was listening to. And so for them to come back and still wow me with like, whoa, this is even different from what they're usually giving me. Like, it's such a giant stride forwards into much more diverse territory on this album. They're doing so many different things, and I applauded every single one of them. I mean, for one, the vocals just felt a lot more varied too, as is the case on the intro of Given Life. You've got death growls, you've got these weird warbly kind of half-spoken, half-sung parts, you've got like just straight-up spoken word portions, you've got singing. They're really delivering a little bit of everything. But then the songwriting also, from again, the guitars, the drums, the bass, there's just so much more diversity in terms of what they're delivering from different subgenres. And this became especially clear listening to The Garden's All-Nighters. It's almost got this like Latin nightclub vibe that seems to come out of nowhere, but it works. And again, seeing them live perform this song, it's like we're in the mosh pit and then all of a sudden it just breaks out into this dance party and literally everybody's just kind of grooving to this almost like Santana-esque guitar part, and it's a beautiful thing. There's also some impressive performances in terms of like straight up guitar solos too. And unlike some other really technical music that can end up sounding very cold and robotic in the end, this ends up being a very just highly emotive album, especially the crescendo at the end of the League of Endangered Oddities. That one still gets me choked up, even just playing it back in my head right now. Or better yet, you've also got the one from If They Holler, Don't Let Go.
Are you crying? What's that? Are you crying? Am I crying? No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
It's an album just packed to the gills with memorable moments that stick with you forever. Every single song seems to have 3 or 4 like trademark spots where it's just like on most albums, you're like, oh yeah, this is my favorite part. Or yeah, this is a really cool part. Whereas with this one, each song has like 3 or 4 different parts like that. And it's actually been making it difficult for me to even edit this video because there's like so many different parts I want to include. And I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely have to play them this part. But then as I'm playing through that part of the song, we get to the next part and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about that too. Like we need to include that. And so just take it for what it's worth. What you're hearing here, if you're new to this album and this band, there is so much more, and we're really just scratching the surface. But yeah, I can't tell you just how many times I've referenced like the stomping a cappella intro to, again, If They Holler, Don't Let Go. Or the mush, 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 mush in Glory Kingdom. And I'm all the more impressed with this album knowing a little bit about what a difficult recording process this was, because Justin, one of the vocalists, quit the band due to cited mental health issues. And I feel like you can kind of hear that strife coming through in such a genuine way on all of these songs. And I'm sad to say that I never actually got to see them all together as a unit. I got to see them live twice, but it was after Justin had departed, and so Jesse had kind of taken over handling all the vocals. But that said, even with that lineup, I would still rank these guys as one of the top live performances I've seen of all time. I had so much fun, both of those, and one of them was opening for the Dillinger Escape Plan, and I honestly think I kind of enjoyed their performance just a little bit better. Now, some of the podcast listeners out there may know that I didn't particularly enjoy the new album, Wild Gods. It's honestly one of my biggest disappointments of the year. And that's not to say it's a bad album. Like, you can listen to that episode, hear me talk all about it. There's elements of that album I really like, and I also just appreciate the band for sticking to their guns and doing what they wanted to do, making the album they wanted to make, regardless of what different fans wanted. And so it wasn't really the album I wanted, but don't let that take away from the fact that I still consider myself a huge fan of these guys, and I can be critical of a band that I love. In fact, I think that's really important in fandom, is being able to recognize what you like and what you don't like, both for yourself and for fair feedback for the band. At the end of the day, I would rank Worse Than Alone in my top 10 favorite albums overall, like of all time, and probably one of the most important for the decade. It got me through some really rough times and once again expanded my taste and perspectives on music in general. So yeah, once again, that's why the number 12 Looks Like You is yet another band that changed my life, and particularly why Worse Than Alone is an album that absolutely changed my life and perspective looking forward and got me into so many other things that I'm into now and that inspired this channel to begin with. But I'm going to cap it off there. Thank you as always for watching. That'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.